Okay, so here's an update for the end of the German half of the November 26th game turn. The weather is light freeze and limited flight. So light freeze doesn't have much of an effect really after I've already had a light freeze turn, so this doesn't really affect anything. But the limited flight restricts air missions to taking place in just the movement phase. You can't do air missions in the reaction or exploitation phase under limited flight. Okay, so here's what has happened. The Germans moved into position. They've got quite a few infantry divisions there, and they were able to attack that unit that has the DG marker on it. We did an air barrage and then attacked with these two stacks. The Germans took a step loss, and then the Russians, they took a step loss as well. They've got a factor 4 fortification there, which is really good. So they only took a step loss to this Russian Guard mechanized infantry unit, and they also lost a light tank unit, but they held the line, so that's good for the Soviets. So it's going to take a while for the Germans to break through there, but a little bit further to the south, the Germans were able to destroy the Russians that were in that hex. They were in a hedgehog, a level 2 hedgehog there, but they were able to destroy them. They got a DG result using an artillery barrage, and then they attacked with these 3 stacks into that hex. So they destroyed the Russians. The remnants are back here. They were DG'd and took step losses. So this has just got 1 step remaining in that Russian division. Then during the exploitation phase, the Germans, they've got several of these. As you can see, these reserve markers, these stacks, these are like panzer divisions, and some of them are motorized infantry divisions. So they were in reserve mode, and units that are in reserve mode during the exploitation phase can be activated and moved their full movement allowance. So that's the advantage of putting units in reserve mode. And the Germans, because of their mobile style of warfare, they're given a lot of reserve markers. They have 24 reserve markers, so as opposed to the Russians only have 12. And the Russians don't have a lot of units that are very mobile at this stage of the campaign. Most of them are just infantry units. So they were able to move 3 divisions, the 19th Panzer, the 10th Panzer, and the 5th Panzer divisions were able to move through that breach, and they've moved into positions to cut off supply for all of these Russian units there. So those Russian infantry divisions are going to have to try to break out in the Russian half of the turn. So that's a problem for the Russians there, because as you can see, that's not too far away from Moscow. I'm also going to need to get these hedgehogs built up. I want to get those all to level 4 if I can. And then over further to the south, Germans are preparing to attack here. They've got units right up along this river line here, and they tried to attack across, but were not successful. The Russians actually gained surprise during that combat and had a 6-column shift in their favor. So the combat adds for the Germans from this hex attacking across this river were not good at all, and they lost 2 steps. They only inflicted 1 step loss on the Russians, and so the Russians held there. So, but the Russians don't have any units along this flank. It's really thin. And so if the Germans can get some units in trace supply along this rail, they might be able to outflank and get in behind. So we'll have to see how that goes in future turns. And then all the way further south, not a lot happened. The Germans, they don't have enough combat supply to really do much. Down here, I've got to get more combat supply up there, and then move it into a spot where the HQ can throw the supply forward so that these units can start to attack. So that is, oh, and then all the way up further north, again, not much is happening. The Russians are, they're retreating, they're trying to get into position to defend along that line. They're just, I don't know if I have enough units up here though, actually, so I'm going to have to make some decisions on where to defend. And the Germans did break through. There was a couple of Russian stacks that retreated, and there's one left that's surrounded there and DG'd, so that guy's in trouble. So that is an update again for the first half of the November 26th turn. So now we're going to move on to the Russians' half of the turn. See you next time.